One of the things I've found myself doing as this pandemic has worn on is the fact that I'm cooking a lot more. Uh, it's important that you gotta start cooking for yourself and relying less on getting food outside. I mean, that's not to say that having a meal at Panera or Subway is bad, but you also gotta learn how to cook for yourself so that way you don't have to go out and spend a lot of money. Now, honestly, I felt like I probably should be spending more time cooking instead of just being, lazy and playing video games all day, but it's a good opportunity for me to start learning how to become independent, especially one day when I finally get to move to my own apartment or my own house. So today's dinner, spaghetti and no meatballs. I'm just gonna make a standard spaghetti and sauce kind of meal. But already got the water starting to heat up, and then in just maybe about 10 to 15 minutes should be boiling, and I can start cooking this spaghetti. It's been a pretty busy weekend, which is why I haven't been filming a lot in recent days, but I at least get to spend the remainder of April 19th to speak to you a little on what has been going on. A lot of why things have been slowing down has a lot to do with catching up on editing previous videos of the COVID-19 Chronicles, doing some household chores, and recording music. By the way, if you didn't know, I also operate a channel called Mark Joe Music, and last night I was spending almost an hour trying to get the best take of a song called We Shall Overcome. I know many older people know the song very well. One of its well-known versions is by the late Pete Seeger, and it was an anthem in the 1960s for the civil rights movement. Gosh, when I think of that time period, when I think of what the years were like before I was born, it makes me wonder what the quality of life was back then and how people looked and acted around each other. Certainly no internet or Super Mario back then, that's for sure. Anyway, I was able to successfully make a cover for the channel, so don't hesitate to check it out. I put a link below on the description so you can go ahead, click it, and it'll take you directly to Mark Joe Music. Anyway, as usual, here are the new numbers as of 1:38 p.m. earlier today. There are 2,374,141 worldwide, 742,442 of those cases in the USA alone, resulting in 163,372 fatalities, while 611,159 have recovered. So we have eclipsed that 600,000 benchmark there in terms of recoveries. That's good. We want that number to keep going up.
And a testing facility critical to going forward. Josh.
Yeah, highly critical to being able to open up the city, Bill. This is one of the city's testing facilities, this one in Harlem, to serve underserved communities in the minority communities here in Harlem and in all 5 boroughs. But the big question is there enough testing capacity to be able to open up New York State?
Now you can see there's patients everywhere.
After just a few weeks, the difference is palpable.
I'm tired.
This was Mount Sinai Dr. Matthew Bai last month when his ER was teeming with COVID patients. Today,
No patients in this hall at all. It is a beautiful sight to see.
the numbers bear it out. Hospitalizations across the state are clearly trending down.
The question is now, how long is the descent and how steep is the descent? And nobody knows.
But here's something most health experts do know. If they can't diagnose existing COVID cases, then they can't isolate the sick. And they can't lift the restrictions that have choked the economy.
That's a lot of locations.
Tonight, the president held up a list of thousands of labs he says are ready to meet the demand for those tests. But Governor Cuomo says that misses the point. He knows where his labs are. What he needs are physical supplies, like the swabs they use to get the samples. States are now competing with one another to buy those supplies and are begging for help from Washington. It looks like Cuomo will be able to plead his case directly.
He's coming to the Oval Office tomorrow afternoon. Andrew is going to be coming in with some of his people, so we look forward to that.
Meanwhile, the state today administered the first 3,000 of the other kind of test, the one that determines if someone's already had COVID-19. A smaller study in Los Angeles estimated infections at nearly 55 times the number of confirmed cases, totaling nearly 500,000 in all. Those people now might have immunity to the virus, except, the nation's top expert says, they also may not.
When you have an antibody that you are protected against reinfection, but that has not been proven for this particular virus.
As of April 21st, 10:38 a.m., 2.5 million cases worldwide, 2,501,156, 788,920 of those in the U.S. alone, and now 171,810 fatalities, while 659,732 have fully recovered. I've been hearing a lot about these protests popping up in cities across the country, and they're mostly happening in places where the coronavirus has not been particularly lethal. And I get it. It's frustrating to not be working, to not be receiving any wages, filing for unemployment and not getting the benefits in a timely manner, to not being able to go to places of worship and not being able to see your family and friends on a regular basis. While this virus will certainly not be at the level of the Spanish flu and the Black Plague, it is still a lethal disease. And it's also a disease that, even though we know more about now than when we did 40 days ago, there's still a lot that we haven't been able to understand about this disease. In fact, today, I read online, and I don't know how accurate this is that there's variations of COVID-19. A perfect way to describe it is like the color blue, but then you have different shades of blue. You have indigo, you have cerulean, you have periwinkle, all different variations of blue, and each one of them behaves differently and could be mild to some, to the ones where it actually kills the host. So just because you live in an area that may not have had a huge spike in cases doesn't mean that other parts of the nation are the same. You especially look at the most densely populated areas that have more poverty. The virus was able to spread and transmit very easily, much quicker than the flu did when you pack that many people in just 1 square mile. Um, but I know that what we're going to see in the next several weeks is that the states that haven't been ravaged hard by the COVID-19 are going to be the ones to open up first. So for me, living in a populated state like New Jersey and living near New York, complaining about this is just the last thing I want to do. And I know people who have passed away and were seriously ill from this disease. So while my heart wants to say, I didn't get sick, I don't want to stay home. If need be, I'll wear a mask and stay a safe distance from people, but just let me work. But my brain has to say, hold it. Remember those people who have died and their families, and how those families are never going to be the same again. Don't risk it. So basically, no need to protest, okay? Especially when you know that you're going to be opening up first, much earlier than places that have a higher population density. It's definitely not worth a second outbreak where it could be you who could be lying on that hospital bed. A tube stuck down your throat to help you breathe, or God forbid, be a casualty of this disease.
Put together an army of tracers who then trace each person who tested positive, who did they contact, and then isolate those people who you contact. Also, talking about reopening, we're going to make reopening decisions on a regional basis, based on that region's facts and circumstances about the COVID virus. In other words, just like some states will reopen before other states because they have a different circumstance when it comes to COVID and their status with COVID, it's also true across the state. North Country has a totally different situation than New York City. Central New York has a different situation. We operate as one state, but we also have to understand variations, and you do want to get this economy open as soon as possible. And if a situation is radically different in one part of the state than another part of the state, take that into consideration. And that's what we're going to be doing. So the same logic that applies to the country applies to some states, this state, where you have those varieties across the state. And we need to take that into consideration. So the way we've been working on the economy in general across the state, where we recognized there's one state, yes, but there are regional economies within the state, and we've been working with each individual regional economy. We'll do the same thing on this phase. Let's talk about reopening economies in that regional context and coordinate it regionally. And that's what we're going to be doing. And again, I've said this statewide, but I want all our regional partners to hear us. Let's not talk about just reopening. Let's not have gone all through this and all we're going to do is go back to where we were. How do you use this as an opportunity to learn the lessons and to build back better?
During my drive-arounds last week, I passed by some of the basketball courts that I would usually go to almost every day during the spring and summertime, and it's quite heartbreaking to see the nets being tied up and police tape blocking the entrances to the courts. Obviously, that's all been there for quite some time now since this pandemic really started flaring up. It's been just about over 40 days since the NBA announced that they were going to suspend the NBA season indefinitely. In fact, I remembered hearing the sobering news while I was flipping between two games. The Knicks and the Hawks were playing, and the Mavs and the Nuggets were on ESPN. I don't think I've seen something transpire so fast in that short amount of time than what I saw on that Wednesday, March 11th evening. From hearing about the Jazz and the Thunder canceling their game to suspending the NBA season indefinitely, all in pretty much taking place in the span of 1 hour. Obviously, that Jazz player that had the COVID-19 virus was Rudy Gobert, and soon enough, more players started testing positive, including several members of the Brooklyn Nets. When you try to explain the 2019-2020 season to future generations, kids who are not born yet or who are too young to remember this pandemic, it's going to be pretty hard to explain without sounding like, a rambling old person. But there's obviously so much to explain just how this season was just the most bizarre, but also the most memorable season in NBA history. And also how unusual life was like during the coronavirus period. Let's think back to the Summer League and that once-in-a-blue-moon earthquake that had happened while the Knicks and the Pelicans game was going on ESPN. And there was just so much hype behind that game because Zion Williamson made his Summer League debut, the number 1 pick in the 2019 NBA draft. Now, I don't believe much in coincidences, but isn't it strange how that earthquake seemed to have served as a bad omen, a negative sign of things to come? And then we lost Kobe, snatched out of this world on January 26th of this year, and the severe impact that it had made in this world. Losing Kobe Bryant was like losing Michael Jackson back in 2009. Nobody wanted to believe it. Nobody wanted to accept it. It was one of those moments where you remembered where you were, and you remembered exactly the moment you found out that Kobe was gone. You remembered what the weather was like, and and what the aftermath of it was for the days and the weeks following it. Then we come to this pandemic. Of course, at the time, nobody would have predicted that this is where we would end up. And so, looking forward, big changes are definitely coming to the NBA after this virus pandemic is over. In the short term, once the season starts back up again, there is definitely going to be no fans in attendance at the venue for these NBA games, for the playoffs, and even for the NBA Finals. In the long term, I can't really say for sure what's going to happen. Will the NBA season's schedule be changed? Will there still be no fans next season, given how we are nowhere close to getting a bona fide vaccine treatment? But we will know for sure in the coming months what's going to happen, and I will be very interested to see how this is going to affect how I watch the NBA, just as much as everyone else is just wondering what is going to happen with life moving forward.